I come to Parliament today to report on our plans for the next European Council on December 10th and 11th. But before I turn to that, please allow me to update you on two issues that will certainly also be topic on the European Council. It's about Brexit and about the situation we are facing with respect to the MFF and Next Generation EU. Honourable members, these are decisive days for our negotiations with the United Kingdom. But frankly, I cannot tell you today if in the end there will be a deal. There has been genuine progress on a number of important questions, on law enforcement and judicial cooperation, on social security coordination, and also on goods, on services and transport. We now have an outline of a possible final text. In these areas, there are still some important issues to agree, but they should be manageable. However, there are still three issues that can make the difference between a deal and no deal. The crucial topics for the European side are, of course, questions linked to the level playing field, the governance, and fisheries. And with very little time ahead of us, we will do all in our power to reach an agreement. We're ready to be creative, but we are not ready to put into question the integrity of the single market, the main safeguard for European prosperity and wealth. And this is why we need to establish robust mechanisms, ensuring that competition is and remains free and fair over time. In the discussions about state aid, we have still serious issues, for instance, when it comes to enforcement. Significant difficulties remain on the question how we can secure now and over time our common high standards on labour, on social rights, on the environment, the climate change and tax transparency. You know all these standards. We want to know what remedies are available in case one side will deviate in the future. Because trust is good, but law is better. And crucially, in the light of recent experience, a strong governance system is essential to ensure that what has been agreed is actually done. Concerning fisheries, no one questions the UK's sovereignty in its own waters. But we ask for predictability and guarantees for our fishermen and fisherwomen who have been sailing in these waters for decades, if not centuries. Honourable members, as I said, the next days are going to be decisive. The European Union is well prepared for a no-deal scenario, but of course we prefer to have an agreement. I fully trust in the skillful steer of our chief negotiator, Michel Barnier. But one thing is clear. Whatever the outcome, there has to be, and there will be, a clear difference between being a full member of the Union and being just a valued partner. I am fully aware of the challenges the current situation is creating, especially for the Parliament and the ratification process. And this is why I sincerely thank for your support and your understanding. As in the past, we will walk those last miles together. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren Abgeordnete,
members of the House. At the same time, the EU is waiting for the green light for its next MFF and Next Generation EU. In May, the Commission presented its new generation plan and the MFF. The heads of state and government of the member states met in July and spent and negotiated 4 long days for a compromise. You, honourable members of the House, developed that package of measures further, and now we have a result. that meets the concerns, the political concerns appropriately in many areas. However, 2 member states have now expressed a doubt. Now, the best way to deal with things would be to allay those concerns. But in July, all 27 member states agreed on a conditionality mechanism. We're talking here about violations of the principle of the rule of law, which are now threatening the EU budget. And only that. It's appropriate, it's proportionate, and it's necessary. It's very difficult to imagine that anybody in Europe could possibly have anything against that principle. Anyone still in doubt has a clear path before them. They can go to the European Court of Justice and allow the new rules to be tested there. That is the place that differences of opinion about legislative texts are usually settled. And that is not done at the expense of millions and millions of European citizens who are urgently waiting for our help. They need an urgent answer from us. Those people, for example, who've closed restaurants and bars for our own good, those whose financial viability is under threat, those who fear for their jobs. And some of those people are in Poland and some are in Hungary.
This is especially the case as the pandemic situation remains serious. With nearly 3,000 deaths a day, COVID-19 was the cause number 1 for death in the EU last week. Hospitals remain under stress, and in some regions, intensive care units are overwhelmed. I know that shop owners, bartenders and waiters in restaurants want an end to restrictions, but we must learn from the summer and not repeat the same mistakes. Relaxing too fast and too much is a risk for a 3rd wave after Christmas. Weeks ago, I've said that this Christmas will be different. And yes, it will be quieter. And this is also a question of solidarity between member states. But there is also good news. The European Commission by now has secured contracts on vaccines with 6 pharmaceutical companies. The first European citizens might already be vaccinated before the end of December. And there's finally light at the end of the tunnel. And yes, as I've said, vaccines are important, but what counts is vaccinations. Member states must get ready now. We're talking about millions of syringes, we're talking about cold chain, we're talking about organizing vaccination centers, we're talking about trained personnel that is there, you name it, all this has to be prepared. In short, member states have to prepare the logistics for the deployment of hundreds of millions of doses of vaccines, because this is our ticket out of the pandemic. Honourable members, whether COVID or not, there is another crisis that rumbles on. Global warming, the crisis of our planet. And honourable members, a growing number of countries have pledged carbon neutrality by 2050. Good news. I firmly believe we must all put a price on carbon. These words could have been mine, but they're not. These are remarks of Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, at the G20 summit last weekend. For the first time since 4 years, the G20 agreed on clear commitments for the fight against climate change. And Europe has been proudly leading the way. By now, more than half of the G20 members have committed to climate or carbon neutrality around 2050. It demonstrates that being courageous pays off. And it shows that we have chosen the right course when we decided to cut back CO2 emissions until 2030 by at least 55%. This should also encourage the heads of states and government to confirm this goal at the next European Council. Et avec cela, nous voulons...
And with that, we wish to reinforce cooperation. So to finish, allow me to talk about security in Europe for a moment. I'm quite sure that I speak for the whole of the Union when I say that Europe stands in solidarity with the French and Austrian citizens. Europe stands together in the face of terrorist attacks in our cities, and Europe is ready to act. On the 9th of December, the Commission will present a new European agenda for the fight against terrorism. We wish to reinforce cooperation between security services. We wish to give border guards the modern technology that they need and intensify our efforts to reduce radicalization. We also wish to better protect public spaces.
When member states do not put into practice what they agree upon, for example, the strong rules against money laundering and terrorist financing, or against the use of firearms, implementation is key. And I'm sure the European Council will be an opportunity to turn to action quickly. Honourable members, from Brexit to the fight against the pandemic, from the budget to the fight against terrorists, it is when we manage to join forces that we Europeans can achieve the most. It is when we negotiate hard and then stick to the compromise found that we move forward best. This is how we will finally leave the corona world and continue to build our future. Lang lebe Europa, long live Europe, vive l'Europe. Merci.